The church bells tolled in the distance as I stood by my husband's coffin. 40 years of my life, my love, my loyalty, my sacrifice, were being lowered into the ground. But even in grief, I felt the sting of betrayal. I expected my children, Julian and Leo, to stand beside me, to honor their father and comfort their mother. Instead, they whispered in corners, their eyes not wet with sorrow, but gleaming with hunger. By the time the will was read, my world shattered. The lawyer's words sliced through me. The estate, the company, the wealth, will be divided between Julian and Leo. And nothing for me. The sons I had raised, the family I had built, had erased me in one stroke. But what they didn't know was that my husband's final act hid a secret. One that would turn their triumph into their downfall. From the moment the will was read, I knew my life would never be the same. Julian sat proudly, his chest puffed out like he had already inherited the throne. He was always the ambitious one, hungry for control, convinced that power was his birthright. Leo, quieter but no less dangerous, smirked at me from across the table, his grey eyes glinting with satisfaction. Together, they believed they had won. For them, this was more than an inheritance, it was conquest. My husband's empire, the company we built from nothing, the properties, the fortune, all placed in their greedy hands. And me. I was erased, dismissed like an afterthought, as though decades of loyalty, sacrifice, and love had never existed. But betrayal has a way of sharpening the mind. As they celebrated their victory, I sat in silence, clutching something they overlooked. My husband had left behind a second will, one not meant for their eyes. Hidden, protected, entrusted to me alone. In those pages lay a truth that would tear down their illusions and expose their greed for what it was. The coming days would be a battlefield. Julian's arrogance grew, his voice echoing in boardrooms as he claimed the company as his. Leo moved in shadows, whispering lies, manipulating, always trying to outwit his brother while tightening his grip on what wasn't his to begin with. But I carried a secret neither of them suspected. Every word from that hidden will was like a weapon in my hand. My late husband had chosen me, not them, as the true heir. And when the moment was right, I would strike. What began as grief would soon become war. And the men who thought they could erase me would soon learn, a mother's silence is not weakness. It is preparation. The twist they never saw coming was already in motion. Before the will, before the betrayal, there was a family. Or at least, what looked like one. I married my husband when we were both young and hungry for life. Together we built something from nothing. He brought the vision, I brought the discipline. He spoke of empires, while I kept our accounts balanced, our home steady, and our children cared for. Julian, our firstborn, arrived strong and demanding. From the very beginning, he mirrored his father. Confident, stubborn, unwilling to be denied. People admired him for his boldness. But I saw the shadows in his pride. He didn't just want success, he wanted domination. Leo, born 3 years later, was different. Quiet, calculating, always watching. If Julian was fire, Leo was ice. He never shouted, but his silence was sharp, cutting deeper than words. While Julian fought openly for his father's approval, Leo waited, patient, striking in subtle ways. As the boys grew, I tried to guide them. I taught them kindness, humility, respect. But my husband, he only praised ambition. He rewarded strength, manipulation, and cunning. And so my sons grew into men shaped not by balance, but by greed. At the dinner table, I often sat in silence as father and sons argued over profits, investments, expansions. My voice, when I tried to offer reason, was brushed aside. "You don't understand business," my husband would say, dismissing me with a wave of his hand. My sons learned that lesson well. By the time they were teenagers, they no longer heard me. Still, I hoped. I believed that one day, when they had families of their own, they would understand sacrifice. That they would see I had been the one holding everything together. But the years passed, and instead of gratitude, their hunger only grew. By the time their father's health declined, they no longer saw me as a mother. I was an obstacle, standing in the way of their inheritance. I think my husband knew this, even if he never said it aloud. His empire had consumed him, just as it consumed our children. And in the end, perhaps guilt drove him to do what he did, to hide the truth, to leave me with the real power in secret. What my sons never understood was that while they were busy chasing power, I was the one quietly preserving it. The betrayal I faced at the will reading did not begin that day. It began years earlier, in every dismissal, every mocking smile, every time I was silenced at my own table. And that is why, when the moment came, I was ready. The night after the will was read, I sat alone in the study, the sound of rain tapping against the window. My sons had celebrated their victory earlier that evening, drinking and laughing as though they had already claimed the world. They didn't even look at me as they left, their voices echoing through the halls, dripping with arrogance. But in the silence, I pulled out the envelope that had been slipped into my hand when no one was watching. It was not from the lawyer. It was from my husband himself. My breath caught as I broke the seal and unfolded the pages inside. It was another will, written in his familiar handwriting, signed, dated, and sealed by a different notary. And unlike the one my sons paraded around, this one left everything to me. The company, the properties, the accounts, every last piece of the empire we had built together. At first, I thought it must be a mistake, a draft perhaps. But as I read further, I realized it was deliberate. My husband had hidden this will away, leaving instructions for it to be revealed only to me. A final act of penance, or perhaps a final recognition of my role in everything we had built. Shock gave way to something else, resolve. For the first time in years, I held real power in my hands. The empire my sons thought was theirs was, in truth, mine. And while they gloated in ignorance, I sat in the shadows with a weapon stronger than any of their schemes. But secrets cannot stay hidden forever. Already, Julian grew bolder, summoning board members and announcing changes to the company. Leo whispered to lawyers, pushing for documents to be signed quickly. Their greed was a storm rising around me, and it was only a matter of time before it collided with the truth. I could have remained silent, let them play their little games. But the will in my hand burned like fire. I could feel my husband's voice in every word, urging me not to surrender, not to let his empire fall into ruin. That night, staring at the flickering lamplight, I made my choice. I would not remain invisible any longer. If my sons wanted war, they would have it. In the days that followed, the mansion no longer felt like a home. It became a battlefield, every corridor echoing with the sharp edge of ambition. Julian moved swiftly, as if he had already crowned himself king. He summoned board members to private dinners, signed papers with a flourish, and barked orders at the staff as though he owned them. From now on, he declared one night, pacing the dining hall, everything runs through me. Leo played a different game. He visited the lawyers, whispered into ears, and made himself appear like the reasonable one. But his grey eyes betrayed him. He wasn't seeking peace. He was plotting, waiting for the perfect moment to strike against his brother, or against me. Their greed poisoned every corner of the house. Arguments erupted between them almost daily, each trying to claim the larger share, each accusing the other of betrayal. The empire they thought they controlled was already fracturing, not because of me, but because of their own hunger. And still, I said nothing. Late at night, I sat in my study with the true will in my hands. I read it over and over, tracing my husband's signature with trembling fingers. It was my shield, my sword, the truth that could cut down both of their lies in a single stroke. But revealing it too soon would be dangerous. If Julian discovered the document before I was ready, he would stop at nothing to destroy it. If Leo found out, he might try to manipulate me, twist it to his own advantage. So I waited. I listened. I watched. The tension reached a breaking point one afternoon when Julian stormed into the living room, his face red with fury. "Mother," he spat, "why do you insist on meddling? You have no stake in this. Father left you nothing. Stop pretending you matter." Leo smirked from the corner, adding fuel to the fire. Maybe she enjoys watching us tear each other apart. Maybe that's her revenge. Their words cut deep, but they also strengthened me. For years, they had dismissed me, mocked me, underestimated me. They thought I was powerless. But in truth, I was the only one holding the real power. And soon, I would prove it. The storm was coming. The only question was, when to unleash it. The confrontation came like a storm breaking. It was evening when Julian burst into the study, his eyes burning with fury, his voice loud enough to rattle the chandelier. "Enough games, mother," he roared. "The company is mine, the estate is mine, and I won't let you stand in my way." Leo followed close behind, quieter, but no less venomous. His smile was thin, his voice calm and cutting. She's holding something back, Julian. Can't you see? She's playing us. She always has. For a moment, the two men turned their rage on each other, shouting, pointing, accusing. Greed had eaten away whatever brotherhood they once had. Their father's empire had not united them, it had destroyed them. And then I stood. With trembling hands, I laid the envelope on the desk. Their voices faltered as they watched me unfold the paper, the crackle of the parchment louder than their arguments. I looked each of them in the eyes, my voice steady as steel. Your father did not forget me. He did not cast me aside. He entrusted everything to me, because he knew neither of you were ready. Julian snatched the page from my hands, scanning the words, his arrogance crumbling into disbelief. His face flushed, his jaw tightened. No, this can't be real. This is a forgery. Leo leaned closer, eyes darting across the document. His composure slipped for the first time. It's dated, signed, notarized. His voice trailed off as the truth settled in. The study fell into silence, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock. 4 years, they had silenced me. 4 years, they treated me as invisible. But in that moment, the power was mine. Their smirks, their arrogance, their cruelty, it all collapsed in the face of undeniable truth. Julian's anger turned to desperation. You can't do this, Mother. You'll ruin everything. I looked at him, calm and unshaken. No, Julian. I'll save it. From you. Leo whispered, almost pleading. Mother, you can't shut me out. But it was too late. The war was over. The empire was mine. And their reign of arrogance had ended in ashes. The storm passed, but its echoes lingered. Julian stormed out of the study that night, his fists clenched, his pride in ruins. For the first time in his life, he had been stripped of the illusion of control. His booming voice, once filled with arrogance, was now reduced to silence. The empire he believed was his had slipped from his hands like sand through his fingers. Leo remained behind, sitting slumped in the chair, his eyes hollow. He had always believed he could outsmart everyone. Me, his brother, even his father's legacy. But now the mask of cunning had fallen, revealing the small, frightened boy he had always been. In the days that followed, the household shifted. The staff no longer looked to Julian or Leo for orders. They turned to me. For the first time, I was no longer invisible. Board members who once dismissed me as the grieving widow, now spoke my name with respect. They knew where the power lay, and it was not with my sons. Julian tried to fight, calling lawyers, threatening board members, making desperate moves to reclaim what was never truly his. But documents don't lie, and neither did my husband's signature. Every legal door slammed in his face. Leo, too, tried his games, whispering, pleading, promising loyalty if only I would share the inheritance. But I had learned my lesson. Trust is not given to those who would sell their own mother for gold. The mansion grew quiet. No more shouting, no more footsteps of men who thought they were kings. Only silence, broken by the rhythm of my own breath as I walked the halls with my head held high. I had not just inherited wealth. I had inherited freedom. The freedom to no longer be dismissed, to no longer be erased. The freedom to live the rest of my life not in shadows, but in light. Julian and Leo lost the empire because they were never worthy of it. I had carried it all along, even when they mocked me, even when they left me with nothing. Now the empire was mine, not as a prize, but as justice. And justice, at last, had been served. When the dust settled and the shouting stopped, I walked through the mansion in silence. Every corner held memories, laughter that once filled these halls, arguments that cut deeper than knives, moments of hope that had long since faded. For years, I had been a shadow in my own home. I had been told my voice didn't matter, that my place was only to serve, to endure. My husband praised ambition in our sons while dismissing my quiet strength. And my sons carried that arrogance into adulthood, forgetting the woman who held everything together. But life has a way of revealing truths. The inheritance was never just about money. It was about recognition. It was about justice. In his final act, my husband gave me not only wealth, but proof that I had always mattered, that without me, nothing we built could have survived. My sons inherited greed, and it destroyed them. They were blinded by the hunger for power, tearing at each other until there was nothing left. But I inherited something they never understood. I inherited resilience. I realized then that strength is not always loud. It does not always roar in boardrooms or demand attention at tables. Sometimes strength is quiet. It endures. It sacrifices. It waits. And when the time is right, it rises. For too long, I had believed their lies, that I was invisible, unworthy, powerless. But now I see the truth. Power is not given. It is claimed. And in the end, the greatest inheritance is not gold, or land, or companies. It is the courage to stand, even when the world tries to push you down. This was my inheritance. This was my justice. And I will carry it, not as a crown, but as a reminder that no one, not even family, has the right to erase me. And so, this story comes to a close. But perhaps, as you listened, you recognized pieces of yourself within it. Maybe you know the silence of being overlooked, the sting of betrayal, or the heavy weight of family expectations. Maybe you felt invisible in your own life, waiting for someone, anyone, to finally see your worth. If this story touched you, if it made you pause and think, remember this: you are not alone. These are not just stories. They are mirrors, reflecting the struggles, the secrets, and the triumphs that exist in every family, in every home. Life is rarely simple. Sometimes justice comes quietly, sometimes painfully, and sometimes not at all. But the lessons remain. The strength you carry, the choices you make, and the dignity you hold on to, those are the legacies that no one can take from you. If you want to continue this journey with me, if you want more stories that reveal the hidden truths behind closed doors, subscribe to this channel. Here, we explore tales of love, betrayal, secrets, and redemption. Stories that will challenge your beliefs, stir your emotions, and perhaps even change the way you see your own life. Don't miss what's coming next. Every episode holds twists, every story carries a lesson, and every voice deserves to be heard. So, if you haven't already, click that subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you'll know when the next story arrives. And if this story resonated with you, share it. Someone you know may need to hear it too. Because sometimes, the right story at the right time can make all the difference. This is not just a channel. It is a place where stories live, where voices rise, and where truths, no matter how hidden, are finally revealed. Until the next episode, thank you for listening, for feeling, and for remembering that your story matters too.